What's the stupidest way you've injured yourself? Let's pick up the lid of this burning stove. Busted my nutsack on a mechanical bull at the Saddle Ranch in Los Angeles while in college. Right when I signed the waiver I said, what's the worst that could happen? I found out. Must have slammed my nuts into the saddle while doing it but didn't notice. Went to the bathroom later, and while in line, noticed my legs felt sticky. I put a hand down my pants, and when I pulled my hand out it was covered in blood. My buddy asked what that was. I told him. Then said watch, clean hand, bloody hand. While putting my other hand down and up to show the blood. Went into stall, blood all over both legs. Put some TP down there, and went back to having a good time at the bar. At the end of the night, went to the hospital, and got 8 stitches on my nutsack. Was a pretty fun night. Ran full speed into a pole balls first. It wasn't easy explaining it to my mom. I fell about 15 feet off a balcony while in university, and trying to hit on a girl. Was very drunk and didn't realize how thin the railing was. Got hay, out and over I go. Got my arm caught in the bars on the way down, messed up my shoulder, and landed on my hands and face. Broke or sprained all of my fingers. Not a good night for this guy. Played who can get their hand closer to the burner. No one ever said you couldn't touch it, so I won. Had the most excruciating circular blisters in the shape of a stove burner for a week or two. I dislocated my kneecap on a dance floor. Cut myself on frozen food. I woke up at middle of the night and got off my bed and fell and sprained my foot. Bent down to pick up something I had dropped and ended up hitting my head on the metal frame a chair and splitting my eyebrow mayo. Put a knife into a slingshot to shoot my buddy in the ass. Believe it or not, there was no L-will involved. The idea popped into my head and my 14-year-old brain thought, holy shit, that sounds hilarious. Fortunately, the knife slipped and completely opened up the space between my thumb and forefinger. Internal stitches, external stitches and a thing that held my hand in place for a while. I felt dumb, it hurt badly, but at the end of the day I'm so happy I hurt myself instead of doing some serious damage to someone else, because I wasn't thinking things through. I was maybe 10, and pulling weeds with a thing that looked like a forked screwdriver. Basically you'd shove it in the root and pull up. One especially pesky weed wouldn't let go, so I pulled upwards with all my little might. It let go, and I stabbed myself in the face right beside my eyeball. Luckily it just missed by I had a decent gash. I stabbed an X-Acto knife blade all the way into my palm while opening a new pair of boxing gloves. I knew right away what I did. The worst part was having to clean up the obscene amounts of blood I got all over the place. I've told this story before, but here's once more. I was sleeping one afternoon, and all my weight had fallen on my arm. As a result, my arm fell asleep too, and got dead numb. The phone started ringing, and the sound somehow blended in my dream, causing me to dream about a fire alarm going off. I got panicked in my sleep, and that panic continued when I realized that the ringing wasn't just in my dream, it was happening for real. So I popped up, sleepy and confused, and started running towards the source of the noise. Comically enough, my arm was so numb that it was beyond my control and was flailing randomly by my side, crashing onto nearby walls and furniture as I was running towards the sound. It was like running with a jelly-like arm. Think what happened to Harry Potter in HP and the Chamber of Secrets when Lockhart deboned his arm accidentally. Anyway, I don't know which of the billion crashes and bumps was the one that did the job, but that's how I dislocated my pinky. It was a good hit and my finger stood at a really weird angle afterwards, so I had to go to the doctor to put it back in its place. Hurt like a bitch too. Running back to the controller after going to the restroom and realizing the game wasn't paused. Rolled my ankle pretty bad. I was baked and baking and couldn't see the meat thermometer, so I leaned in and grilled my face a bit. I still look a bit like John Marston. My dad was bowling once. On his backswing, the ball slipped out of his grip. Happens to everyone who bowls regularly. Instead of letting it fall, He whipped around and tried to catch it. Instead, he got a broken finger as the 16-pound ball came smashing down on his hand. Fell off my bed and broke my ankle. I was cutting a wire tie off a couch a month ago and stabbed myself in the wrist with a steak knife. Got a tetanus shot after that one. Okay, edit, since this apparently is getting attention. I got the TDAP shot from my local pharmacy and it didn't hurt that much. It was a $400 couch from Wayfair for my grandmother. And I was not cutting toward myself, I was cutting straight forward, but the force I used sent my right hand towards my left one in a weird, hard to describe with just text way. It was a sucky day. Once me and my boyfriend were play fighting on my bed. He turned over and let rip the loudest fart right on me, causing me to jump back in such shock that I elbowed the corner of my desk with such force I had to go to the accident and emergency for an x-ray. I'm laughing about it now, but it honestly hurt like a fucker. I thought I'd shattered every bone in my arm. I never told anyone that's how the injury happened either. I just told everyone something made me jump. Pre-story context: when I was younger, my brother and I would watch TV together. We had a different taste in shows, and my parents didn't govern what was on, so it was really down to who had the remote. Because of this, if I had the remote, I would take the remote with me when getting up to go to the toilet or get a drink, etc. So one day I get up and go for a piss. I put the TV remote on the floor by the door. Me being 7, I didn't really care about my privacy, so I left the door ajar, which became my downfall. I finished doing my thing, and after washing my hands I bent down to get the remote. At the same time, my mum notices the door is open, so she shuts it. Me being a dipshit comprehends the door being shut, but still stands up. My head goes straight into the door handle and leaves a nice big cut which needed stitches. I still don't quite understand how a door handle did so much damage. You wouldn't have thought they had it in them. Also, one time I stuck a stick down a rat hole cause I wanted to see some rats. Anyway, it turns out this wasn't a rat hole, and I was met by a swarm of angry hornets. I've dropped my phone straight onto my face while texting in bed. Not me, but a friend of mine is the champion of hurting yourself in stupid ways. Broke his finger trying to pick up a stationary basketball, broke his toe walking down a flight of stairs, got a concussion playing dodgeball, had to take a couple days off school because he drank something really spicy. He was paid $20 to drink it. His parents found out, took away the $20, and then made him write a book report on a book with a title that was basically How Not to Screw Up Your Life. I put my finger in a fan to realize if the fan was spinning fast enough. I was studying in an awkward position on my stomach for an hour or two, and I strained my lower back to the point where it was extremely uncomfortable unless it was in a certain position. That was fun telling my coach the next day I couldn't do any exercises. I broke my toe by turning around and stubbing it on a wall. This is ridiculous, but in college, 20 years ago, a few days before the opening of a play I was in, Crazy for You, a musical with plenty of singing and dancing, I injured myself in the following way. I was in the kitchen of my studio apartment making dinner. Dinner was 1 can of Chef Boyardee beef ravioli. After grabbing the can from the shelf, I opened it over the sink with a can opener. I had been living in this apartment for a few years, so everything I did in the kitchen was done robotically. The lid now off, I tossed it toward the bin. Now, I heard it hit the side in a way that told me that didn't make it into the bin. So, as soon as it hit, and I heard it, I turned to walk over and pick it up. Little did I know, the lid had hit the side of the bin and immediately began to roll back toward me. So, I heard, turned, stepped, barefoot, and my left foot stepped directly into the now vertical rolling can lid. In entered my foot like a scalpel. I grabbed my foot and fell like Marvin Home Alone, 1990, right onto my back. As I fell, the blood from the wound sprayed across the wall. It was incredible. There was no one around, so I had to drive myself to the urgent care. I wrapped my foot in a bath towel and taped it with packing tape. It was my left foot, and I drove a manual, so that was a pain. Got to the urgent care, blood soaking through the towel now, and still had to wait for 45 minutes in the waiting room, adding insult to a very bad injury. Finally got in, had to tell the nurse what happened. I told her, in detail, and she laughed a bit with pity. So when the doctor came in, I just told him I stepped on some metal. 8 stitches later, and I was good to go. Had to use crutches, so as not to aggravate the wound. The doctor told me to stay off of it completely for at least a week. That evening, I went to the final rehearsal for the play before we opened. What the hell happened to you? The guest director asked. I started to answer in detail, but then quickly realized that the best route was to play it off like it was no big deal and toss my crutches to the side to illustrate that fact, like some sort of church-going believer at one of those churches where they lay hands on you. I assured him everything was fine, and we all got to work. After that rehearsal, we opened the next night. I would end up doing the show with 100% enthusiastic glee for 4 weekends, 16 shows. It was miserable. The shoe I was wearing on my left foot was so filled with blood by the end of every show that it was leaving a bloody footprint during the curtain call. To this day, the scar still hurts on my foot. I haven't eaten ravioli or any other Chef Boyardee products since. Depends on what you mean by stupidest. If we are looking at an injury resulting from doing something stupid, then there was the time I got a corneal ulcer because I wore contacts at work. We were sandblasting. I knew it was stupid before I did it, but have you ever tried the overglasses safety glasses? They're a pain in the ass, and the bridge of the nose, and behind the ears. I had to sit in a pitch black room for days. Even the light from the TV on the dimmest setting was excruciating, dropping liquid fire into my eye at regular intervals. If we are going for how the fuck did that even happen, stupid, I once sneezed, and, I'm pretty sure, pulled a muscle in my neck. No idea how it happened, but it happened and it hurt like a bitch. Trying to clean the facial hair out of my razor, I sliced one of my fingertips slightly open. Less than a second later, and irritated with blood dripping onto the sink, I quickly attempted to clean the rest of the razor exactly the same way with my next finger, resulting in another slight slicing. In my defense, it was very early in the morning and I wasn't yet a coffee drinker at that point in my life. I've come to realize that the easiest way to remove hair from a razor is to press the razor on your arm or leg and glide it in the opposite direction. The hair grips to your skin and comes right out. A lot easier than running it underwater and/or tapping it out. Might not work the best with little hairs though. So my son wanted me to open his ice cream bar. You know, the good humor ones on the stick. I was standing next to the kitchen table. I dropped the ice cream, and when I moved my hands down to catch it, I hit the top corner of the chair with my wrist. Broke 2 bones in my wrist, and spent weeks in a cast. I caught the ice cream though. I sneezed and dislocated a shoulder. I've never really lived that one down. I also dislocated a shoulder getting overly competitive in a sack race. And I've also dislocated a shoulder just in my sleep. Recurring injuries a bitch, and, unfortunately, shoulders are a lot like Pringles. Once you pop you just can't stop. Not me but my brother. Him and his friend were playing FIFA and both are very competitive. It got to the 89th minute and the score was 1-1. My brother scored a last-minute winner and jumped up to celebrate. He landed awkwardly and ended up snapping his ankle. It's still the only time I've witnessed someone injure themselves whilst playing a computer game. A few months ago I was squatting at the gym and somehow managed to crack a rib in the process. For the life of me, I'm not sure how I managed that. At 49 years old, I decided to go snow tubing with the kids. It was really icy. I hit a bump and flew off, ended up with a fractured fibula, 3 fractures in my ankle, 2 fractures in my foot, a torn meniscus, and nerve damage in my lower leg and foot. 3 surgeries, 12 screws and a plate in my leg, and 8 months off work. Good times.